Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a Pokemon that is an amazing core breaker in the current Open Ultra League meta, and that is XL Malamar. Thanks to the Psychic Spectacular event that happened a couple weeks back, I was able to get all of the Malamar XLs needed, and I was able to find a rank 11 Malamar. And after trying it out, this thing is unbelievably strong. I paired it up with a Shadow Drapion and a Galarian Weezing, and went very positive despite being at leaderboard ELO. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at XL Malamar in the Open Ultra League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a very positive lead, leading the Malamar into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Superpower does threaten a one-shot. I decide to bait with the more expensive foul play, and the bait is successful. Grabbing a shield without debuffing myself means that I can very comfortably tank the drill run, and I'm never going to be in danger of my opponent potentially farming me down. They switch out into Tentacruel. I bank back-to-back superpowers on the Malamar, and now I can just bring in the Shadow Drapion. Scald will connect. Opponent gets a bit of good luck going their way, as they do get the 30% chance at an attack drop. I go for the crunch, and I get the same luck right back, as I get the 30% chance of a defense drop for them. Despite the fact that this debuff has occurred, it's still not going to be enough for me to pick up the knockout. At this point, I don't really feel like it's worth me shielding. Instead, I would just rather go for energy on Weezing. Opponent is going to switch out into the Alolan Sandslash, and I immediately switch back in with the Malamar. Superpower connects, and down goes Sandslash. In the back is Drifblim. Unfortunately, I am going to only have one Pokemon remaining and no way to reset debuffs. But being up 2 shields, I should still be in a winning position. Here, I intentionally throw on less than optimal timing because this allows me to land a Brutal Swing before my opponent can apply an Icy Wind debuff. And landing that damage pre-debuff is very, very valuable for me, as now, even if my opponent does land a bunch of debuffs, I'm still just in a winning position. They bring in Tentacruel, they make a Scald, but a Scald is not going to threaten a KO onto the Weezing. For Weezing, you can definitely run the Shadow if you'd like. I do have a Shadow Galar Weezing that I could build for Ultra, but unfortunately it needs to be best buddied, and I haven't began working on the best buddy, so for now I'm just going to use the one that I have, which is the regular. But the good news is, with a couple well-timed Brutal Swings, we're able to take the win. Malamar versus Feraligatr, the non-Shadow variant. Feraligatr going to fire off its energy right as I make it to the foul play. In the Ultra League, Malamar does have very nice bulk to it, able to shake off that damage like it's nothing, and I return fire with a superpower, and I'm going to look to switch out here into the Drapion. Drapion is going to be hit with a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon not particularly threatening, so I will be able to withstand that damage. Opponent now going to bring in Zygarde, and this is where things get a little bit tricky. Zygarde, of course, monstrously bulky, able to tank crunches like they're nothing. A well-timed crunch debuff on the first or second crunch would be very, very helpful for me. So I go for crunch number 2, and I get the debuff. My opponent could have crunched themselves at any time, so that way they didn't have to shield, but instead, they choose to go down a shield in exchange for exiting with an Earthquake loaded, understanding that an Earthquake is probably going to get a shield back from most things. I bring in Weezing, I am going to use my shield. Opponent brings in Feraligatr, but Feraligatr did not have the residual energy needed to outpace, so I can fire off the Brutal Swing, pick up the KO, and now they're going to be switch locked into whatever they bring in for about the next 35 to 40 seconds. It's going to be Cresselia. My clock's up. They're switch locked, but I am not, so I can send in Malamar. Malamar firing off the foul play. That hits for super effective damage onto the bulky Cresselia. Nice overfarm there by my opponent. I will commit the final shield because I just need to put pressure onto my opponent. In comes Zygarde. I'm going to look to overfarm with the Malamar because I do want to exit this with residual energy if they decide to no shield. My opponent actually decides to shield, and in doing that, they've just sealed their fate because my clock's up. I can bring in the Weezing, and look at this Fairy Wind farm down. The perfect farm down. I have 2.5 Brutal Swings loaded, and this Cresselia is about to have a truly, truly terrible day. I believe the Cresselia did get 1 turn bring in there, so to compensate for that fact, I'm actually going to overfarm by 1 just to show that even without that 1 turn bring in, the game still would have been a win, as we're able to win charge attack priority over the Cresselia, and that will easily KO. we've got a Core Breaker on the lead in the next match, and its name is Shadow Drapion. The Malamar plus Galarian core is basically a perfect core in the Ultra League with the exception of the Dark Poisons. The Dark Poisons are going to be very difficult to deal with. In this instance, I will go for a superpower and a dip, because my opponent firing off a move into my Drapion with theirs is honestly great for me. They're staying in, so I will fire off another Aqua Tail. The unfortunate thing is this Aqua Tail will not put them into a range where I can potentially farm them down. They're going to switch out pretty late into Virizion. And our switch clocks are very heavily misaligned, and that's something that I can absolutely take advantage of. I'm forced to throw my Crunch just to burn the switch clock, but then my clock's up. They're going to be stuck here for a while, so now I can just bring in the Weezing. I don't really want to go for an overheat because I am of course switch locked, so what I'm going to do is just go for as much farm as possible and then hope eventually that a brutal swing will allow me to Fairy Wind down before they can make their next move. So Leaf Blade is going to connect. I'm able to tank so many Leaf Blades due to the fact that all their damage is resisted here. I go for the brutal swing and it's just not enough to set up the farm down. Bit of a miscalculation there on my part. They're going to make a final Leaf Blade and they actually let themselves get KO'd. I have so much energy. In the back, they have their own Malamar, and I will go for the Brutal Swing bait. Opponent calls the bait. That's a pretty nice read, and now I will full send the overheat. They're probably not calling the bait again. There's going to be the shield. I switch out into my Malamar, safe in the knowledge that I'm going to be able to tank whatever they throw. They have a ton of energy on the Drapion. I'm going to let the first through in case they get a Crunch debuff. They actually go for an Aqua Tail first, and now this one I am going to shield. This time it is going to be the Crunch. Crunch does not get the debuff. Malamar gets the Psywave farm down. And at this point, my opponent has no way to win this game. I have so much energy on my Malamar. I'm going to get to a superpower, and this superpower just does too much damage. And the moment they shield, I can just win it with energy on my Drapion. So I can switch in the Drapion. One Poison Sting allows for the combo play with the Crunch. Crunch knocks out the Malamar, and I'm able to take the win. We move to the next match, going up against a fellow content creator, the Gengar Life, and we got a terrible lead leading into Galar Moltres. I save switch into Shadow Drapion, and he's going to respond with Hippowdon. Hippowdon, I'm pretty sure, is one of his favorite Pokemon, and he runs it all the time. Hippowdon, of course, will take super effective damage from the Aqua Tails. If I can successfully shield a Scorching Sands, I can flip this matchup, but I get baited. Oh, that is really, really unfortunate. I will fire off the Aqua Tail, as I have a massive energy head start here. He's firing off another move. It's a 50-50. I commit the shield. I get baited twice, and I think that's going to seal my fate here. Oh, no. I shield two baits. I'm so close to the Aqua Tail, but I get outpaced. He fires it off one turn before I get there. It's the Scorching Sands, and I'm unable to make a play for Switch. And by not being able to make a play for Switch, I think I'm going to be in some serious trouble, because odds are, if he's leading the Moltres, he should have good counters to Fairy in the back. Due to the debuff from the Scorching Sands, I actually can't farm down, so I'm forced to superpower there, which is not ideal. I bring in the Weezing. It's a Tentacruel in the back, and unfortunately, I guess I should have called a bait in the mid-game, because that would be the thing that could have won me the match. We've got the same lead in the next match, leading into the Galarian Moltres. My opponent stays in to throw an Ancient Power. I was going to throw before they made the Brave Bird, but they only end up going for an Ancient Power, and he switch out into their own Drapion. Last time, I didn't win Switch advantage, and that ended up costing me pretty significantly. So if I'm able to make a play for Switch, I will try and do so. I need to generate some kind of advantage out of this mid-game. I know this Aqua Tail won't knock me out, so I am actually going to decide to let this through. Opponent, oh, they're actually running Crunch. So the fact that they crunched there, they should be on Crunch and Sludge Bomb. I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail. That's going to be shielded up. Opponent is going to look for the farm down, but I make it at their Aqua Tail. I'm really hoping they let this go. Please don't go down two shields, but they do. Good players will very, very rarely give up a shield and switch advantage, as that's just basically game over. Because even if you go down two shields, if you have Switch in good alignment, you can probably still do pretty well. Opponent is going to be firing off the Crunch. That deals devastating damage. I'm going to bank a move, switch into the Weezing, try for the farm down, but I just can't quite get there. They're able to make a last-second Crunch, and now in the back is Tentacruel. Oh my goodness. Two-Shield Galarian Weezing can beat a lot of things, but Tentacruel is not one of those Pokemon. I'm just going to need to spam out Brutal Swings and eventually try and go for a combo with Foul Play. But I have to get them into Foul Play range, and these Brutal Swings are just doing nothing. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into the Malamar, throw a Psywave, and then the Foul Play. So I switch, I accidentally catch, And that's just game losing for me, unfortunately. Oh, that is really unfortunate. I wanted to try and go for good timing there, but it actually ends up costing me as I accidentally end up catching. I go for the superpower into the Moltres, but yeah. Unfortunately, the Malamar, it's incredible, but if it's switch locked against one of these dark types and you just cannot flip switch, then you're going to be in for a difficult time. If I debuff my attack, I can just never get rid of the Tentacruel, so I have to try and go for a Brutal Swing, but that does next to nothing against the Dark type. So unfortunately, we are going to lose back-to-back games to Moltres leads, but if you can make a play for Switch, I would try to if you lead into a Moltres, as winning Switch advantage against those teams is so important. We move to the next match, leading the Malamar into Lickilicky. This is a great lead. I can tank whatever they throw here, and I'm actually going to, I was going to say bait with a foul play, but they actually decide to fire off their energy first. They go for a body slam, and since a superpower doesn't KO, there's no reason to superpower here. I'll just go for the foul play. They actually shield, they respect it, and now I can go for a superpower, and then I'm just going to go for a dip, whether they shield it or not. They let it go. I bring in the Drapion. I will respect the potential Earthquake because Earthquake landing would be devastating. Then I'm just going for a Body Slam and a switch out into Tentacruel, and baiting this out is awesome. I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back crunches, and I win CMP over my opponent. I intentionally was just farming up to throw on 8 because that's when they get their first Scald, but the fact that it ended up being the back-to-back moves ends up working out nicely. My opponent does get the attack drop. The attack drop is a little unfortunate. I'm going to farm up right around 100 energy, and I have the back-to-back crunches loaded and ready to go. It looks like this will be another CMP tie. We'll have to see with the debuff. Can this crunch KO? And it barely does not. So that debuff does end up mattering as my opponent is now able to win switch advantage in this game. I bring in Malamar. I do get a small energy head start. In the back is Clefable. They're going to bring in Lickilicky, and I have a choice to make. I will commit the shield. Opponent, oh, they're not running it. I was expecting them to be running Earthquake, but instead they're running Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball is a lot less threatening. They actually let the Brutal Swing go, so they're just going to trust in Clefable. They're forced to go for Swifts here. Swift not going to do a ton of damage. They're going to need quite a few to pick up the knockout here. Oh, but they're running Meteor Mash. Oh, that is very bad. I'm going to fire off an Overheat at this Clefable. Overheat is going to be shielded. I need to bank the Overheat, switch into the Malamar, and they make a game-losing mistake. They let me get the Superpower, and the Superpower landing will put them in Overheat range. Wheezing is favored to win Charge Attack priority versus a Clefable. They knocked me out with a Moonblast. Honestly, a Meteor Mash probably would have KO'd, but even if they had two, Wheezing should win Charge Attack priority there, knocking out the Clefable. And despite the fact that they had a Meteor Mash out of nowhere, I'm able to take the win. Great lead in the next match, leading Malamar into the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Again, how I like to play this out is tanking a move, baiting with the foul play, as it's very difficult for opponents to try and call that bait. And then I will be in a pretty nice position where I can just win even shields. But my opponent calls the bait. What an unbelievable call by them. My goodness. I'm now going to fire off the Superpower, get the shield, and I think I just have to let the Malamar go. What a call there. My goodness. I'm now going to bring in the Shadow Drapion. Drapion, I could have just clicked Aqua Tail there. I'm pretty sure this is not enough for a drill run, but I second guessed myself. I shield, and now out comes Tentacruel. Baiting out the Tentacruel is big, because of course the Wheezing, not a big fan of Tenta. I go for the Crunch, and Crunch is going to do some pretty nice damage. And again, I really like cap tying against Tentacruel with my Drapion. Crunch will land. Again, no debuff, but that's okay. I'm not in a range where a potential Scald will knock out. Don't get me wrong, it does do a lot of damage, but it cannot KO. I'm going to overfarm as much as I can. Opponent, oh, they actually don't end up cap tying there, so it looks like they might be trying for the farm down. The Crunch gets the shield and gets the debuff. Maybe an Aqua Tail can KO now. This will be very close. Aqua Tail barely does not KO. I bring in the Malamar. They're going to send in the Sandslash, and I get to the move. I get to the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to knock out the Sandslash. And if I'm the opponent, I think I'm just bringing in the Tentacruel. That way they have a 30% chance at an attack drop, and a Scald will do quite a bit. I decided to save my shield. I'm saying my shield will be more valuable versus whatever they have in the back. And they have Feraligatr in the back, and they got the debuff as well. And that debuff sinks any chance of winning this game for me. Because look how little that Brutal Swing does. My goodness. Opponent waits the turn, so unfortunately, this is going to be tough. I'm going to throw one. I wait the turn, but they keep waiting, and I just have to resign the match. Very unfortunate. All right, hopping into the final match, it's my nemesis, the Galarian Moltres lead. I've lost against 2 of these, but let's see if I can play it a bit better this time. This time, I'm going to get damage on it. Before they could potentially throw an Ancient Power, I fire off the Aqua Tail, and now it's a lot closer of a range where it can be manageable with the Malamar. They go for a Brave Bird, in comes Tentacruel. Tentacruel going to get hit with the Crunch, and we're seeing a lot of, like, very common archetypes so far from the Ultra League. It feels like the Ultra League meta is definitely settling a lot more, where we're seeing a lot of Tentacruel plus Dark. We're seeing a lot of people running kind of more neutral picks like Lickilicky, and Drapion being an ever-present safe swap. Switch timer's up, so I'm bringing in the Malamar. Malamar is going to get the full farm down. Psywave going crazy. In comes the Moltres. I don't really want to debuff myself, and I think that 2 foul plays will come very close to knocking out here. 2 foul plays won't quite KO, but a superpower would. So I'm going to bluff. I'm going to bait with the more expensive foul play because I do not want to debuff myself, and the bluff works. I get the shield. This is a tough shield call to make. I shield. It's the Brave Bird. Opponent is going to switch into their final Pokemon, which is Skeledirge. And this could get a little tricky. They now have a move. So I'm going to switch, anticipating them to undertap, but they do not. I was really hoping to catch a Disarming Voice, but it's unsuccessful. And now I'm going to get hit with a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to hit for massive damage. I'm firing off the Brutal Swing. This is super effective damage. Opponent, that does quite a lot, but they're able to outpace by a single turn. And this is where things could get a little bit tricky. I'm going to bring in the Malamar. I should be able to make a foul play without taking an Incinerate, as I think I'm 3 off here. Oh, it was actually 2 off. I was 2 off. So I don't take the Incinerate, because Incinerate would not register yet. I pick up the Knockout. In comes the Moltres. Moltres cannot get the farm down, and we're able to avenge our defeats from earlier. So even though there was like a hard counter lead that was giving me trouble, I was able to adapt my play style there, play it a little bit better, get damage on the Moltres before it switches out, and the adaptations in playstyle actually result in a win. All in all, I do think that the XL Malamar is a pretty nice core breaker for the current Open Ultra League meta. I don't think it's a must-have Pokemon by any means, but I do think it is pretty comfortably within the top 20. It's a very, very strong pick, and you can get some very, very nice wins with it. So if you happen to have grabbed those XLs, and actually looking at PvPoke, looks like it's ranked number 16, and I would say that feels pretty accurate. Much like in the Open Great League, the combination of Psywave, Foul Play, Superpower just gives you an insane amount of neutral play against most things. Basically, the only things you're going to struggle against are other Dark types, like the Moltres, the Drapions of the world. And against Fairies, your charge moves are walled, but at the very least, you do have Psywave pressure. But against a lot of teams, Malamar can prove to be a pretty nice core breaker. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.